Always great to hear about a new discovery at Pompeii, and you may be hearing about this. This was a private bathing establishment, and they found some rooms in there which seemed to have been quite sumptuous. This was on the luxurious end of the private bathing scale, because you would have public baths, you had private bathing establishments, and they could, as you imagine, they might occupy various points on that spectrum. You might have the really luxurious ones like this, but you could also have the ones which were a bit more, well, should we say they had a bit of a reputation about them. Let's start at the beginning then with the changing rooms. This is the changing rooms, and as you can make out, it's pretty high end. You've got a wonderful floor there. You can't really see a great deal of detail, but you can make out there's pieces of inlaid marble. That's a sort of, quite a fashionable design. You've got the stone benches, you've got the walls which have been painted really nicely. We'd also expect perhaps to have some shelving there or something for lockers for people to put their clothes in. But even so, you can already see this is a really nice place. And obviously it's the changing room, so it wants to tell you how important, how luxurious it is. And I think it does a good job of doing that. On the plan, you can actually see where the changing room is in the top right there. But then you've also got some other rooms. And again, this wasn't an extensive suite of rooms, but they were luxurious nonetheless. So you've got the boiler room, which offered the functionality. You've got the warm room, you've got the hot room, and you've got the cold room. And I'll come to the cold room in a moment because there's a really good picture that I can share and talk about. Now, when it comes to the hot room, we can see something there that you could probably make out that seems to be the bath. However, it isn't that big, and I think this points to a wider thing that sometimes people don't always realise, that there wasn't a great deal of what might be considered submersible water in the Roman baths. Of course, there was water that you could stand in or sit in, that kind of a thing, but it isn't like you think of today. If I think I'm going to the baths or something similar, you're thinking of something where you have lots of water to sort of swim in and stuff like that. That wasn't really the case as such with most of the baths. Now, when it came to the hot room, you'd also have more of a dry experience. This was obviously an area where you could sit in that bath, but predominantly you'd be sat around in the hot room because you had dry heat there. This was heated from below. It would be really quite warm, and that was the whole point. You could kind of sit around, talk, and even eat. I don't know about this establishment, but that was also an option. And that always makes me feel a bit queasy because I can't think of anything worse than having a bath and eating at the same time. But anyway, no judgment on the Romans. When you went into the warm room, this is where you might have some oil applied to you and it will be scraped off with a strigil. And that then meant that you could come to the cold room. And so let's see about that. And now you come to the tepidarium, the cold room with the famous plunge pool. And it's beautifully preserved here, and apparently the dimensions are that it's around or just a bit above a metre deep. So again, not something really substantial in terms of being able to swim, but again, perhaps that wasn't the point here. I mean, you can make out in that far corner sort of steps down so people could sort of stand around in it, and perhaps those sort of levels at the side there were so people could sit in it. But also there have been people like me who would have just jumped in and jumped straight out because I don't like standing around or sitting around in cold water, but each to their own. This is a really good example then of a private bathing establishment. Remember, again, this was a private one. Presumably you have to pay, and I suspect as it was luxurious, you'd have to pay a lot or perhaps be a member of some sort. And if you want to know more about baths in ancient Rome and how they developed, don't forget, on the Ancient History Hound podcast, you can find an episode all about it.